Kenya held a peaceful general election that set the stage for transition of power, which ushered in a new government system which includes devolution.
Mungu alinde taifa letu la Kenya na Mungu alinde kontinenti letu la Afrika. Mungu na abariki, asanteni sana. Asante.
Despite minimal civic education on the new devolved system of government, it is now clear to the public that the management of their county resources and the county's development thereof will largely depend on their efforts to choose the right county leaders and to keep them on check in order to execute their duties without question. Kenyans also have the new constitution at hand, a document that will no doubt provide a huge leverage in the public's quest to demand for and defend their rights.
I would have been happy to see fellows putting up front the kind of legislation that they would like to pass. I would like to see, for example, in the counties, the county of Nairobi, trying to say, are we going to legislate how people should participate in these discussions? Because it's not there. How are you going to get the residents' associations participating in these processes in a structured manner? Don't we need a bill, around that? I would want people to start saying, look, here's a draft. Do people have ideas on how we can make this happen?
The electioneering period was largely peaceful and turned a new leaf of election violence set by the 2007-2008 post-elections skirmishes, in which over 1,200 Kenyans were killed and over 600,000 others displaced. In 2013 elections, Kenyans cast their vote like a maturing democracy and relived the peaceful nature that previously earned her an enviable talent, that of being an island of peace in an ocean of storms. But the lost glory did not return on a silver platter. It took concerted efforts of responsible leadership and partnership between various state and non-state actors who passionately preached peace across the nation, and especially so in election hotspots like urban informal settlements. The Civil Society Urban Development Program (CSUDP) played a pivotal role. Through support by the Embassy of Sweden in Nairobi, CSUDP facilitated the creation of the Urban Journalists Forum in order to stimulate informed public debate and opinion in the urban transition.
The forum basically wants to empower journalists whose interest is in covering the urban issues. What we have done was first to break down the barrier between the professionals who would give us very technical terms that not even journalists themselves would understand. UJF fought, first of all, to bring down the wall between the expert terms and terminologies and bring simple communication aspects. For example, why do people in Kibera who are believed to be poor pay more for water than their counterparts in Lavington and the richer neighborhoods? We wanted to really understand those issues, and this is why we brought the experts together with the journalists, so that we break down those barriers.
The forum had journalists and urban development experts sign up to not only educate the public on issues of urban planning and development, but also to commit to peace that would ultimately foster a smooth transition of power.
I think we made a very big difference, and we even forced the presidential debates to address critical urban issues which previously in other elections were just buried in the politics and euphoria that comes with the general election. We made a big difference. We came up with the coined word, choices have consequences. And one of the biggest beneficiaries of the Urban Journalist Forum, I think, was the Nairobi County, where we put the case of one Evans Gidero versus Ferdinand Waititu. And we kept on reminding voters that choices have consequences. And I think when the day came, Nairobians made a very wise decision of the choices they had.
Through such initiatives, a website that supports the work of journalists in the urban spheres has been developed by the Urban Journalists Forum, and a journalist's manual developed to help build a resource base and a quick reference for the media practitioners. Journalists usually have a very tight way of working, and they are always under constant pressure to deliver the stories, because in the newsroom there is no deadline or timeline. The moment the story comes in, it should be on air as soon as it can be. So they hardly have time to even do proper research or to even engage people who can give them proper interviews, especially regarding issues to do with development.
We went ahead and developed an urban journalist manual handbook, which was done by very well-placed professionals, professors who deal in the urban environment, and has given us a quick reference where journalists can come and get information.
The Civil Society Urban Development Program, CSUDP, was formulated to foster the coordination of civil society activities supported by the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA. CSUDP has been designed and anchored on the current Swedish government strategy for the cooperation with Kenya, which embraced urban development as one of the 3 priority sectors to be supported by the Swedish government.
In the context in which the civil society development program has worked in that cooperation has been to more align itself to the civil society contribution to the urban development agenda.
The discussions we've had with CSUDP is that how do we take this to the next level? How do we now, we develop products, we now want to get them to to the point where we can scale them up. And of course this scaling up will work well if we have been able to work with the programs that have the funding, if we've been able to influence the governors who have the money, in terms of how do you make sure that then this product that trying to promote poor service delivery are able to be then mainstreamed within water companies, for instance, or as you do your other programs at the county level.
CSUDP has thus championed increased coordination and leveraging the reserve of best practices to inform urban policy and design or propose urban interventions, as well as upholding the rights approach to basic service provision.
You must then start to say, how do we fit in economies that can, within the urban space, that can accommodate these poor people without relegating them to informalization.
CSUDP further acknowledges the critical role that civil society organizations can play from their vantage position of being close to communities, coupled with their ability to engage in government initiatives and policy making.
CSUDP was a very good innovation. Whoever thought about it, and largely because the urban sector is one that is neglected. The donors have basically put their money in governance, put their money in democracy, some of those soft issues, but not on issues of livelihoods, especially amongst the urban poor.
That is why CSUDP set out to map and profile over 940 civil society organizations in 15 urban areas in Kenya between February and May of 2011. The exercise was done on behalf of the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA, and was the first of its caliber in Kenya.
One of the things that we did realize very early was that you need to bring these voices to bear, because that constituency is already large enough. But if it's not constructed in a manner that it starts to make common sense. Common sense means you're all coming together under the value of one urban space. You don't look at your scattered urban or isolated urban spaces, but you're saying urbanization is in Kenya. If we have to change urbanization, it has to be from one common frontage.
The civil society organization's data capture, profiling, mapping, database preparation, and tabulation has been put down as a structured document that will play a crucial role towards sustainable development in Kenya.
Putting them together in a survey and mapping database that identifies you by location, physical location, that is, identifies you by the character, meaning what you do, how much finances you have, how many staff portfolios you have, I think was a very good starting point, because it legitimized the platform of CSOs. That was one selling point of going to state and saying, we're not just coming here to show you we are civil society, but we're saying this is the grouping of civil society. You can actually find them in your space in these locations, and this is what they do in terms of contribution.
This is a major milestone that deserves to be emulated, especially by the Kenyan government as it transites to devolution.
So if you want to work for a community, it's best that you start to look at yourselves first, at the organizations that are feeding into the community, and say, how can we then put our comparative advantages to bear common fruit? So that if I am investing in housing and you're investing in water, I'm able to do a housing unit that can easily accommodate your water service provision. We are able to do a housing unit that can easily find space for infrastructure provision if you're doing drainage to drain the space.
Question of accountability, question of ensuring that resources are used for what is needed by the people is to me non-negotiable, in that way. And we can only get there by knowing who is best at what, who needs to capacitate who, and so on.
Devolution, a system of governance that was previously misrepresented by feuding politicians as a means to catalyze regional discrimination and relegation, is now better understood and warmly welcomed by Kenyans following the referendum vote that ushered in the new constitution in August of 2010. Devolution has been saluted with such great enthusiasm and numerous expectations, some of which are clouded with misunderstanding and confusion.
The second component in the constitution, which is important and is a cousin of devolution, is what we're calling the equalization fund. Why do we have the equalization fund? We have the equalization fund because we have realized that there are certain areas or certain categories of people who have been systematically remained excluded from governance and access to resources in this country over the years. So the equalization fund is an affirmative action meant to ensure that those who have been excluded previously are elevated to the basic threshold of dignity.
Ukikuta kwamba tukipeleka lazima pale mashinani, even universities from abroad they will come na wanaenda pale grassroots. At the end of the day utakuta kwamba mambo kama kuku, maziwa, kila kitu. Mtu arudi nyumbani ufanya kazi yako, unauzia vitu wako, then you go back to your house. So there's no need kukuja kwa urban centers. Unaona urban centers imekuwa very much populated because everybody is coming to town because wanajua kwamba the only investors wengi wako wapi? Wako in urban centers.
Zamani tulikuwa tuenda mbali kutafuta usaidizi, lakini hatukuwa tunapata, sababu wale wa mbeleni kama walikuwa wanaangalia wale wa juu kidogo, lakini sasa hivi tunaona mwananchi akona bawazi zake anaweza saidika kutoka huko chini.
Ni kama hizi pesa wanasema itapeanwa za makazi. Sasa hapo ndio nategemea. Nitaweka kazi na hizo pesa tukipewa, kwa sababu tuko na kikundi. Walisema watapatia individual, watapatia vikundi.
Whichever anticipations there are, devolution has its benefits and challenges almost in equal measure.
By design of our constitution, the urban areas and cities are actually under counties. Ideally, if we were to review the things, ideally issues of cities and towns should have been another layer, another tier.
Now the third tier where it all happens, which is the urban space, what you call the municipal space, or city space for that matter, was not considered constitutionally in the devolution. So therefore what happens is that it's only going to survive on the basis of delegated authority. And delegated authority from the governor would not be as grounded as when you have your own function within the constitution.
But even before the Kenyan electorate could go to the polls in March 2013, foresighted organizations like CSUDP already formulated avenues through which to rally the public to participate in decision-making processes within the areas ahead of the much anticipated county government system.
A lot of these instruments that the public need to understand, need to engage with, need to own, we're trying to use the urban forum to create relevance around those instruments so that the dialogue is kept alive. And the dialogue is kept alive on the basis of national features.
CSUDP recognizes that a change in infrastructure and governance systems without an engagement of the people may not yield much fruit as far as development strides are concerned.
With trying to bring in the marginalized voices into the whole scheme of urban decision making.
It is against this background that CSUDP embraced the formation of the Civil Society Urban Forum, otherwise known as CSUF. CSUF serves as a platform for promoting constructive dialogue between actors in the urban development sector and advancing a cause for synergies and increased coordination between actors at different levels. As part of its initiatives to engage citizens in decision-making and development processes, CSUDP launched a participatory platform called the Local Urban Forum in Kenya's major towns, which also host the largest urban poor populations. The initiative, dubbed the Local Urban Torch Campaign, was successfully established in 14 towns and now forms a basis on which civil society organizations and locals engage both within themselves and with the authorities.
We have continued now to use these local urban forums through the various sets of legislation that have come through. The Urban Areas Cities Act, the popular version that we published, was actually disseminated through the local urban forums. So they become the champions of urbanization. They're able to go and tell people, look, we have a simplified version of this, and what this means to us is you should be ready to be appointed into what the municipal is. This is what the municipal jurisdiction means. This is what conferment of municipal status is. This is what the governance regimes are. And in a very simplified manner, without giving people a whole big complicated legal language to understand.
The campaign slogan, "Whose town is it anyway?" has proved that securing formal space for popular citizens' participation in the governance and management of the urban affairs significantly enhances equity in resource allocations and development priorities. The local campaign has also cultivated full sense of belonging to both the poor and rich, thus giving them a common front to articulate their challenges and effectively add their voice to policy formulation processes within their shared urban space.
The knowledge platform was again born from the need to facilitate knowledge sharing and information sharing. And it is web-based, which means that you can access it from wherever you are, whether within Kenya or outside Kenya. A knowledge platform ensures that we can marry our policies and strategies with innovative solutions.
With the human rights issues embraced within the Bill of Rights in the new Constitution of Kenya, the demand for observance of the principles and standards of human rights, particularly in respect to accountability, participation, equality, and non-discrimination, are no longer mere advocacy issues but constitutional demands. And CSUDP recognizes that a core value here is in ensuring that all urban initiatives launched focus on achieving popular results and employ implementation processes that have strong normative bases and those that respect human rights standards.